I always figured that if my marriage ever fell apart, it'd be because of something big. A fight, a screaming match, maybe even a betrayal. But the first crack in my perfect world came in the form of a silver glint under the bathroom sink. It was a Wednesday morning, just another rush day in the life of a married man juggling work emails and peanut butter sandwiches for our daughter, Ava. I was brushing my teeth, reaching for a towel on the lower rack, when something caught my eye. A tiny reflection. At first, I thought it was a coin or a safety pin. But when I crouched and picked it up, I knew better. A thin foil circle, about the size of a thumbnail, the kind you peel off the back of a pill packet. My fingers paused on it longer than necessary. The blank silver back didn't say much, but when I flipped it over, the number 3 stared back at me in faint print. Tuesday. Yesterday. Nothing extraordinary, but also everything. See, that little foil scrap didn't belong in our bathroom. My wife, Claire, hadn't taken birth control in years. We had our daughter 5 years ago, and a year later, I had a vasectomy. Mutual decision. We were happy with one child, and Claire was relieved to go off the pill. So what was this doing here? I stood there for a long time, toothbrush dangling from my mouth, listening to the gentle hum of the shower from our ensuite bathroom. Claire was in there now, humming faintly to some song I couldn't quite recognize. It was such a normal scene, so comforting in its routine, that I almost convinced myself I was overthinking it. Almost. But then she stepped out, hair wrapped in a towel, eyes sleepy but alert. She kissed me lightly on the cheek, the scent of eucalyptus and lemon trailing her. "You're up early," she said, glancing at the mirror as she adjusted the towel around her body. "Yeah, trying to get ahead of a meeting. Want coffee?" She smiled. "That'd be amazing." I nodded and left, still holding the foil in my palm, clenched so tight it left a mark. That morning, as I stirred her almond milk into her coffee, I set the tiny piece on the kitchen counter and just stared at it. Eventually, I slipped it into the back of a junk drawer with loose batteries and mismatched screws. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. I couldn't shake the feeling. Not all day. At work, numbers swam in and out of spreadsheets while my mind looped back to that foil. Claire worked in an office downtown, marketing department at a small but growing company. Nothing fancy, just a mid-sized firm with about 50 employees. She'd been there almost 7 years, had made friends, brought home stories of awkward lunches and clumsy interns. But now I wondered what else she brought home. That night, I tried to act normal. We laughed about Ava trying to convince us she needed a dog. We didn't. Ate leftover stir-fry and settled into the couch with a show neither of us really paid attention to. Claire's phone buzzed a few times, and she'd glance at it, smile faintly, then set it face down on the coffee table. She always had. But now, that gesture felt loaded, defensive, calculated. Thursday morning, I woke up before Claire and went into the bathroom again. Checked the trash can. Nothing unusual. Checked under the sink. Behind the tampons, past the lotion bottles, there it was. A half-empty blister pack of pills, tucked inside a small makeup bag. Tiny white pills in neat rows. Days labeled clearly. Monday through Sunday. And Tuesdays was missing. I stared at it like it had personally insulted me. My chest tightened in that weird way it does when you're not sure if you're about to scream or cry. I took photos. Slid everything back into place. Went through the day with a kind of vibrating tension under my skin. Claire was cheerful that evening. Too cheerful. She laughed easily, touched my arm more than usual. I wanted to believe it was because she loved me. But now I wondered if it was guilt disguised as affection. Friday, I called in sick to work. Claire left at 7:15, same as always. Kissed Ava goodbye, kissed me on the cheek, said, "Wish me luck, we've got the Mercer pitch today." I nodded. Good luck. The moment her car pulled out, I sprang into motion. I knew it was desperate. I knew it was wrong. But I had to know. I checked her browser history, nothing suspicious. Her texts, clean. Almost too clean. Like they'd been scrubbed. I was about to give up when I noticed an app one didn't recognize. Vault. Innocuous name. It asked for a password. I tried her birthday. Then Ava's. Then the name of her favorite author. Nothing worked. I stared at that locked screen like it might blink first. Eventually, I gave up and backed out. But then, on a whim, I opened her email. It was a joint account. We rarely used it, mostly for bills and Ava's school updates. But in the trash folder, buried beneath deleted promotional emails, I found a receipt. A hotel room. Just one night. For weeks ago. The same night, she claimed she was working late on a campaign deadline. The name on the confirmation wasn't hers. It was booked under a Michael R. I didn't know any Michaels. At least, none that would be booking hotel rooms with my wife. That night, I said nothing. She came home smiling, poured herself a glass of wine, and told me the Mercer pitch went well, that she felt on top of the world. She was radiant, energetic, more affectionate than usual. As we got into bed, she curled into me, her head on my chest, and whispered, "I missed you today." I didn't respond. I was too busy memorizing the way her breath moved against my skin, knowing that maybe, just maybe, this would all unravel soon. Over the weekend, I started making notes. Who Michael might be. When Claire had late nights. Any mention of coworkers I didn't know. I scoured her social media, which was mostly private. Still, I noticed she'd recently followed someone named Michael Russo. His account was locked, but his profile photo was clear. Early 40s. Stubbled jaw. Polo shirt with the logo of her company on the chest. I checked the company website. He was one of the senior managers. Her boss's boss. Monday morning, I followed her. Not in the trench coat and sunglasses kind of way. I just drove behind her a few car lengths. Parked a block away from her office building. Sat there for nearly an hour. Saw her go inside. Watched others file in. Office workers in slacks and skirts. Coffee in hand. Morning routines unfolding. But something strange happened as Claire passed the front desk. A woman I recognized, Julie, her friend from work, saw her and looked away. Quickly, guiltily, then glanced around, saw no one was watching, and shook her head slowly. It was barely noticeable, but I caught it. Like she didn't approve. Like she knew something she couldn't say out loud. My heart sank as I sat there, suddenly cold despite the sunlight baking the dashboard. Everyone at her job knew, except me. I never used to be the kind of man who watched his wife from a parking lot. But there I was, sitting behind the wheel of my aging Toyota, half hidden by a row of planters, watching the revolving glass doors of Claire's office building like they might spit out the truth. Julie's glance still echoed in my head. That fleeting, loaded look. Not surprise. Not even curiosity. It was recognition. And pity. Like I was the last to arrive at a party that had ended hours ago. I drove off before I did something stupid. But by the time I reached home, I had made a decision. I wanted to see what Claire was like when she didn't know I was looking. That afternoon, I called in a favor. My cousin works in security systems, one of those guys who never quite left the spy phase of his teenage years. I asked if he had access to anything discreet, short-term. He didn't ask questions, just said, "I'll drop off a couple of things tonight." True to his word, he arrived after dark with a small duffel bag and a sober look. Inside, 2 button-sized cameras with motion activation, 1 car tracking beacon, and an audio recorder no bigger than a thumb drive. "They're temporary solutions," he said, "but they'll tell you what you need to know." I nodded. I was past the point of hesitation. That night, while Claire showered, I slid the recorder under the passenger seat of her car and affixed the tracking beacon behind the rear bumper. My hands were shaking, but I moved with purpose. I also placed one of the button cams inside the top bookshelf in our bedroom, nestled between old paperbacks. The second camera went behind a decorative plant in our living room, angled to catch the couch and front door. I didn't know what I was looking for, just that something about the way Claire carried herself lately didn't match the woman I married. I told myself I wasn't becoming paranoid. I was just confirming what I already feared. The next few days blurred into a dull routine of work, dinners, and Ava's bedtime stories. Claire seemed more affectionate than usual, more present. She kissed me longer, laughed louder, sent me random texts during the day like she used to in our early years. But that only made the unease worse. Guilt often masquerades as kindness. On Thursday, the tracker app pinged at 6:24 p.m. Claire had told me she was staying late to finalize a campaign brief. But the signal wasn't anywhere near her office. It was at a hotel. Not the kind of hotel that hosted conferences or business seminars. This was a boutique place, a trendy, dimly lit building downtown with overpriced cocktails and sleek decor. I stared at the dot on the map for nearly 10 minutes, fingers curled so tightly around my phone I thought it might crack. I didn't go there. Not yet. I needed more than a GPS ping and a bad feeling. Friday morning, after she left for work, I retrieved the audio recorder from her car and plugged it into my laptop. I listened to hours of silence, radio static, and traffic noise. Until I hit the clip from the night before. A door opening. Claire's voice, soft, warm. Then a male voice. Laughing. Same room as last time? Claire laughed too. Unless you want to switch things up. The clip ended there. But that was all I needed. My chest hollowed out. I closed the file, eyes burning. There was no explanation that could excuse what I'd heard. No context that made it less real. That night, I didn't say anything. We ate dinner together, Claire humming as she stirred pasta, her phone always face down on the counter. I watched her closely, studied the way she moved, her easy grace, the way she tousled Ava's hair and smiled across the table at me. She looked so normal, so believable. But I knew, and knowing changes everything. Saturday came, and Claire told me she had to pop into the office to fix an error on a print order. I nodded, playing the role of the trusting husband one more time. As soon as her taillights disappeared down the street, I went to work. I took her spare car key from the drawer and opened her trunk. It was clean, orderly, just like her. But tucked inside a side pocket was a pair of heels I'd never seen before. Red, stiletto, more daring than anything she ever wore around me. Beside them, a lacy black bra, still with a price tag. She hadn't even worn it home. I closed the trunk gently, nausea curling in my stomach. Back inside, I checked the footage from the bedroom camera. I hadn't expected anything. Claire rarely came home during the day. But Wednesday afternoon, just after 2 p.m., the footage captured something strange. She entered the bedroom with someone else. I couldn't see his face. He kept it out of frame, intentional or coincidental. I couldn't tell. But I saw his arm, his build, the way he touched her waist like he'd done it 1,000 times. Claire kissed him like a woman starving. There was nothing hesitant, nothing guilty in the way she pulled him toward the bed. I watched for a few seconds. Then I stopped the video and closed the laptop. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I opened her closet and stared at the rows of perfectly hung dresses and neatly stacked shoes. Her favorite perfume, half empty, stood like a sentinel on the top shelf. I used to think the worst kind of betrayal was physical. But watching her kiss another man in our home, our bedroom, made me realize it wasn't just about sex. It was the ease of it, the routine. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. By Sunday, I knew what I had to do. I didn't want a messy confrontation. Not yet. I wanted the truth in full, no shadows left. So I went back to the tracker, watched her movements, set alerts for when she left work. And Monday, I followed her again. This time, she didn't go to a hotel. She went to a restaurant. Upscale, tucked in a corner of the city where lights twinkled even in midday. I parked across the street, windows cracked, heart thudding. 10 minutes later, Claire walked in. And right behind her, Michael Russo. Same man from the company website. Same man from her social media. Her boss. They sat at a corner booth. I couldn't hear their words, but I didn't need to. I watched her lean forward, smiling too wide, brushing his hand with hers. I watched her lips form words I'd once imagined were reserved for me. And as they laughed, clinked wine glasses, and leaned closer, something inside me broke. They were so comfortable. Too comfortable. And worst of all, no one looked surprised. The hostess, the waiter, the bartender. Everyone knew. Everyone except me. I left before dessert. I couldn't stand another second. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake next to Claire, who breathed easily, deeply, her body turned away from mine. I listened to the soft exhale of her breath, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt like I was lying beside a stranger. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. And then, as the sun bled through the blinds, I made a plan. Not for a confrontation. For revenge. There's a kind of stillness that settles over you after the worst has already happened. You stop panicking, stop imagining what could go wrong, because it already did. And in that numb, crystal clear place, I discovered something unexpected. I wasn't broken. I was sharp. Monday morning, while Claire packed Ava's lunch and kissed me goodbye like nothing had changed, I sat in the kitchen pretending to sip coffee. Behind my calm eyes, gears turned fast and hard. She had no idea what I'd seen. No idea what I knew. And I realized then, if I played this carefully, I could turn her deception into a trap. The next phase had to be surgical. I started small. First, I told her I had an overnight team retreat at work the coming Friday. She lit up a little too quickly. "Oh, you're actually going this time?" I nodded. Figured it might be good to get out. Clear my head. She smiled, kissed my cheek. "I think that's a great idea. She never asked where it was. Never asked who'd be there. Just nodded and walked away humming. That was the moment I knew. She was already planning to use my absence, which meant I had my window. That week, I booked a room at a nearby extended stay hotel. Nothing flashy, just functional. A place with a view of our house from the south side, through a narrow line of trees. I borrowed a high-end telephoto lens from my cousin and set up a DSLR on a tripod in the guest room. I calibrated angles until I could see the master bedroom's blinds, our front walk, and even part of the living room window. Next came the hard part, building a story so airtight that Claire wouldn't suspect a thing. On Wednesday, I sent her a picture of the retreat location, just a generic lodge I found online. Thursday night, I left my duffel bag in plain sight by the front door. I told her I'd be driving up early, wanted to beat traffic. "I'll miss you," she said, her arms wrapping around me as I packed the dishwasher. "I'll miss you too." It wasn't a lie. I missed her already. The woman I thought she was. The wife I used to come home to. By Friday morning, I kissed Ava goodbye, waved to Claire from the driveway, and drove off. But I didn't go far. I circled the block, parked a few streets down, and waited until I saw her leave for work. Once the coast was clear, I returned home, grabbed my gear, and moved into the hotel room by noon. From there, I watched. Nothing happened that first day. Claire came home around 6:30 p.m., took a shower, made dinner. I watched her carry a plate to the couch and eat in silence while scrolling on her phone. The calm before the storm. Saturday morning, I watched her wake up alone, stretch in bed, then begin cleaning, music playing faintly through the walls. She wore leggings and one of my old college t-shirts. I almost let myself forget. Almost let the sight of her moving through our home distract me. But then, at 3:45 p.m., she changed. Tight jeans, heels. That red blouse she'd said she bought for a work presentation but had never actually worn to any I'd known about. At 4:22, a black sedan pulled into our driveway. Michael Russo. I recognized him instantly. Taller than I expected. Confident in that cocky, managerial way. Claire opened the door before he knocked. She laughed at something he said, touched his chest lightly as he stepped inside. The door closed behind them, and I sat perfectly still, lens aimed, heart hollow. The next 3 hours were a study in betrayal. They never pulled the blinds. I documented everything. Every kiss. Every moment on the couch. Every second that they touched each other like they had nothing in the world to hide. And maybe they didn't, because from where they stood, they thought they were in the clear. The husband was gone. But I was there, recording it all. At 7:46 p.m., Claire led him upstairs. The bedroom light flicked on. I adjusted the lens. I captured enough to bury them both. By 9:10, the lights dimmed. I saw them move downstairs, her head resting on his shoulder on the couch as they watched something on the TV. I didn't stay for the goodbye. I didn't need to. I had what I needed. The next morning, I returned home just before dawn, parked in the driveway, and made a show of yawning and stretching as I unlocked the front door. Claire was still asleep, or pretending to be. At breakfast, she asked, "How was the retreat?" "Productive," I said, sipping orange juice. "I feel clearer." She smiled. "You look like you slept well." I nodded. I did. And I did, strangely enough. Because I knew what I had to do next. Monday morning, I visited a lawyer. Her name was Tamara Klein, and she specialized in high-asset divorce and digital privacy law. I laid out everything. The GPS tracker, the audio files, the photos, the video. Tamara raised an eyebrow. "You've been thorough." I nodded. "I want full custody of Ava. And I want the house." Tamara tapped her pen. "You've built a solid foundation. But to make this really stick, I want to confront them at her office," I interrupted. Tamara paused. "That's risky. I know. But everyone there knows, Tamara. Everyone but me. I want them to see the truth. I want her to feel it." There was a long silence. Then, she nodded. "If we time it right, I'll make sure the paperwork is served the moment it happens." I left her office with a plan and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. Wednesday afternoon, I put it into motion. I called Claire at work, just before lunch. "Hey," I said, "can I stop by the office? Got a surprise for you." "Oh, sure. Everything okay?" I laughed gently. "Everything's perfect. I'll see you in 20. She had no idea. I stopped at a nearby print shop and picked up the enlarged photo, one of the clearer stills from the video feed. Claire and Michael, kissing on our couch. Her blouse half open, his hand at her hip. I had it printed poster size. Framed it. I walked into her office building like I belonged there. Waved at the receptionist. Took the elevator to the 9th floor. Her floor. The glass walls of the marketing department glinted under fluorescent light. As I stepped inside, I saw them. Claire, standing near the break area, Michael beside her, laughing at something. A few coworkers glanced up. Then the room fell quiet. I set the framed photo on the center table by the entrance. Claire turned and froze. Michael turned, too, and went pale. I didn't say a word, just looked at her. I watched the blood drain from her face. A receptionist gasped. Someone whispered, "Is that?" I turned and walked out, the silence trailing me like a curtain. In the elevator, my hands finally stopped trembling. By the time I reached the lobby, Tamara texted me. "Papers served. Her supervisor has a copy too. You're officially separated." Claire called 5 times before I got home. I didn't answer. I just sat in Ava's room, watching her sleep, thinking about what came next. Because this wasn't over. Not yet. It's funny how quiet a house can be, even with a child inside. Claire hadn't come home the night I served her. She tried to call. I didn't answer. She tried to text. I deleted every message without reading a single word. I wasn't interested in apologies. Not anymore. That night, Ava climbed into bed with me. She'd had a nightmare, something about monsters under her desk at school. I tucked her close and held her until her breathing slowed. She smelled like baby shampoo and graham crackers. She asked if Mommy was working late again. "Yes," I whispered. "But I'm here." That was the first time I realized how deeply I hated what Claire had done, not just to me, but to her. The betrayal wasn't confined to a bedroom or a marriage. It had trickled into the air our daughter breathed, and I couldn't shield her from it forever. The next morning, Claire showed up. I heard her car before I saw it. The crunch of tires on gravel, the tentative sound of a key in the front door that no longer worked. I changed the locks. She knocked once, then again. Harder. "Daniel," she called softly through the door. "Can we talk?" I opened it. Not for her, but for the confrontation I had earned. She looked hollow. No makeup. Eyes puffy. Clothes wrinkled like she'd slept in them. Michael wasn't with her. "I deserve an explanation," I said before she could speak. She nodded. "I know." I let her in, but we didn't sit. She stood by the coat rack, hands clasped, like a kid waiting outside the principal's office. I stayed near the kitchen counter, arms folded. "I never meant for it to go this far," she began. I snorted. "You had sex in our house. In our bed. You filmed over the baby monitor. You meant it." Her face crumpled, but no tears came. Just a long, tired silence. "I was lonely," she said finally. "You've been distant for months. Focused on work, on routines. I felt like we were roommates." I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I just stared at her. "You were lonely," I repeated. "So you decided to let your boss crawl into our bed." She flinched. "It wasn't like that." "No." I opened the laptop I'd set on the counter before she arrived and hit play. It was a muted clip, taken from the hidden bedroom cam. No sound. Just her. And Michael. Laughing. Climbing onto the bed. Claire staggered back like she'd been struck. I closed the lid. "Don't insult me by saying it wasn't like that." She nodded slowly, lips pressed so tightly they went white. "I'm sorry," she said. "More than you'll ever know. Your coworkers knew." Julie looked me in the eye and pitted me. "Your entire office was in on it." "I didn't think they'd tell anyone." "That's the point. You weren't worried they knew. You were just worried I'd find out." Claire reached for the back of a chair, steadying herself. "I'll move out," she whispered. "I'll stay with my sister." "You already have," I said. "The papers were served. You're out. That's not negotiable." She nodded again. She looked smaller now, shriveled. "And Ava?" she asked, her voice catching. "What about her?" I met her eyes. "She stays with me. You can have visitation, supervised, until we sort out custody." Her face twisted. "You'd really, Daniel, don't do this. She needs her mother." "Did you think of that when you let a married man into our home? When you told our daughter you were working late while you were wrapped in hotel sheets?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. I didn't need to yell. The truth did all the damage on its own. Claire left quietly. No tears. No final plea. Just a slow walk back to her car. I watched from the window, my jaw tight, arms aching from being clenched too long. She hadn't taken anything with her, not even her purse. She must have just come to beg. But I didn't budge. I couldn't. The next day, The HR department of her company called me. Not her. Not Michael. HR. Apparently, the framed photo I delivered to the office had made the rounds, fast. Someone leaked a copy to the staff Slack channel. By the end of the day, the entire building had seen it. Michael had resigned. Voluntarily, they said, though I doubted it. Claire was placed on unpaid leave while they investigated further. Office romances weren't against policy, but bringing someone into your marital home? That was bad optics. They asked if I intended to press charges or make a formal complaint. I said no. I wasn't after a lawsuit. I had something better. 2 days later, Claire sent an email. Just 3 sentences. I've lost everything. I hope you can forgive me someday. Please let me see Ava. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to Tamara, who added it to the custody file. I wasn't being cruel. I was being careful. Friday morning, I took Ava to her favorite park. We fed ducks, played tag, bought a snow cone. I kept waiting for the moment to feel normal again. It didn't. That night, I tucked her into bed and sat beside her, stroking her hair. "Where's Mommy?" she asked sleepily. I looked at her tiny hand curled under her cheek, her lashes fanning across her skin. "She had to go away for a little while," I said softly. "But I'm right here." She nodded, trusting me, and turned over. As I watched her sleep, a hollow ache built in my chest. Not for Claire, but for the life I thought we had. The one I fought for. The one I defended in my head every time she came home late or whispered text messages behind closed doors. That life was fiction. Saturday morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Later, when Ava napped, I listened. It was Michael. He sounded tired. Nervous. "Daniel, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I just want to say I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for not coming to you directly. Claire told me you didn't know. I thought maybe it was an open thing. I should have asked. I didn't. I'm sorry." I deleted the message before it finished. The last thing I needed was an apology from a man who had stripped the last of my illusions. Instead, I opened my laptop. I started a journal. Not for revenge. Not for her. For Ava. One day, she'd ask questions, and I wanted to have answers. Not gossip. Not rumors. The truth. I started with the glint beneath the bathroom sink. The pill backing. The piece of foil that changed everything. And then, at the bottom of the screen, I typed one final line before closing the entry. "Next week, I make it public." I didn't know how yet, but it was time. Everyone knew, except me. Now, everyone would know. I'd always thought revenge would feel like fire. Like rage so pure it would burn away everything in its path and leave me standing tall, righteous in the ashes. But when the time came, it didn't feel like that at all. It felt cold, focused, like pulling the final stitch on a wound I never asked for. The week after Claire's departure passed quietly. Ava adjusted faster than I thought she would. Kids do that. They mold themselves to new shapes because they don't yet understand the permanence of change. She asked about her mother less often, and I gave her pieces of the truth in ways her small mind could carry. Claire called twice. Both times, I let it ring. She emailed again. A long, rambling message full of apologies, regret, and veiled self-pity. I didn't reply. Instead, I worked. Not on healing. On exposure. It started with a short video, just over 2 minutes long. The first 20 seconds showed Michael walking into our home. The next 30 seconds, laughter in the kitchen, wine being poured, Claire's hand brushing his. Then, the image of them ascending the stairs. The final 30 seconds showed blurred silhouettes behind the curtain in our bedroom, unmistakably intimate. I didn't need to show more. The implications were clear. Over the closing seconds, I included a voiceover, not my own, but an AI-generated voice reading words I'd written in one sitting, teeth clenched. When betrayal wears the face of someone you trusted most, it's not just a marriage that breaks. It's your sense of safety, your belief in loyalty. And in the end, the truth doesn't heal you, it frees you. I added no names, no explicit accusations, just the footage, the facts. Then I posted it anonymously. First to a private subreddit where people shared stories of infidelity. Then to a private LinkedIn group that included several of Claire's colleagues. And finally, to a Discord server run by local marketing professionals, one where Michael was known to be active. I didn't expect much, but within 2 hours, the video had over 10,000 views. By evening, it had been mirrored on TikTok, reposted on Instagram, and circulated internally at her company. The watermark in the bottom corner, the last to know, became a kind of signature. Dozens of users messaged the account asking for follow-ups. I never replied. I just watched. Claire's name wasn't in the video, nor was Michael's. But anyone who knew them? Anyone who had sat through office happy hours or caught glimpses of whispered conversations in meeting rooms, they knew. I'd handed them confirmation, and I'd done it without a single word. By Monday, Claire was terminated from her job. No official explanation, just a mutual decision, and a thank you for your time statement sent to staff. Michael's name was already off the leadership page. The email started again, this time from Claire's personal address. Subject lines like, "Please stop. You're ruining my life. This isn't fair. We need to talk." I didn't answer any of them. Because it was fair. More than fair. I hadn't lied. I hadn't invented anything. I'd just shone a light where she thought no one would look. On Wednesday, she showed up at my parents' house while I was picking Ava up from my mother's. She didn't knock. She just stood outside her car as I walked down the driveway, Ava's hand in mine. "Please," she said softly. "Can I just talk to you? 5 minutes." I bent and kissed Ava's forehead. "Go inside, sweetheart. Grandma's making cookies." She ran up the porch steps, blissfully unaware. Claire looked thinner, pale. Her hands trembled at her sides. "I deserve it," she said. "I know. I'm sorry." I said nothing. "I lost everything," she continued. "My job, my savings. My friends barely speak to me. Even Julie unfollowed me." "Julie?" I raised an eyebrow. Julie knew. She flinched. "I didn't think it would spread like this." "You didn't think anything through," I said coldly. "You thought you could lie to your husband, sleep with your boss, smile for family photos, and walk away unscathed." "I was stupid," she whispered. "Lonely. He gave me attention, and I confused it with love." "You didn't just cheat, Claire. You involved our daughter. You brought him into our home." Tears welled up, but I didn't look away. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," she said. I miss Ava." I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth. "You'll get visitation," I said, "once the court finalizes it. But not now. Not like this." She nodded, shoulders slumping. "Can you just tell her I love her?" I stared at her for a long moment. And then, quietly, "She's 5, Claire. She still thinks monsters hide under her bed. You think she's ready to understand you?" Claire's face twisted, but she said nothing else. She got into her car and drove away. That night, I wrote another journal entry. For Ava. Sometimes, people hurt us not because they want to, but because they don't care enough not to. You'll learn the difference someday. When you do, I hope you walk away without flinching. Weeks passed. The video eventually died down. The internet always moves on. But the damage lingered. Michael moved to another state. Claire filed a counter request for shared custody, but the court sided with me. Ava stayed in my care, with scheduled weekends approved once the therapist deemed her ready. Claire took a job at a small startup 2 towns over. Word was, it paid less than half of her old salary. I didn't rejoice. I didn't celebrate. I just healed, piece by piece. I sold the couch, bought a new bed, repainted the bedroom, removed every trace of her from our shared spaces, but not out of spite, out of necessity. Ava and I built new routines. Saturday pancakes, Wednesday story nights. We smiled again, not because things were perfect, but because they were honest. One day, a coworker of mine, someone who'd seen the video and pieced together the truth, asked if I'd ever consider dating again. I laughed at first, but later, driving home, I thought about it. I might. Not today, but someday. When I do, it won't be with a woman who hides phones in drawers or wears fake smiles to bed. It'll be with someone who shows up with truth, even when it hurts. Because that's what I give them. And it's what I'll teach Ava to demand, too. Love without truth isn't love. It's a transaction. A mask. Claire taught me that. The hard way. But in the end, I'm grateful. Because now I know what real love should never look like.